Stand, well, turn off our cell phones. Silence, Mona.
Yes, sir.
Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Durkin?
Here.
Ms. Ruska? Mr. Jacobs? Ms. Sierra?
Here.
Ms. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Salas?
Here.
And Mr. Stevens?
Here. All right, discussions, information items, FOIA request.
We have one FOIA request. It's on Board Book, page 4, a brief summary pertaining to a former employee. And so files that were redacted via legal counsel were released accordingly.
Tentative budget.
Tentative budget for the 1920 or 2019-2020 school year. That would have been bad if I would have said 1920 school year, right? So I've asked Mary Ann to put this on the board agenda as basically just a discussion item to give the Board of Education an idea of how this kind of works. The board agenda or the board budget is technically not formally approved until September. And so what is a little odd about that is the school district and the township treasurer operate on a fiscal year of July 1 through June 30th. So technically, the school district will almost be completing its first quarter of spending in operation before the budget is formally approved by the board.
So is that statutory or is that practice?
That is, I would say, well, it's practice. I should say statutory because all school district budgets in the state of Illinois have to be submitted before September 30th.
Okay.
And the fiscal year that our township treasurer operates on is July 1. And so, I've only been handling budgets the 8 years I've been here, so that is the practice we have also had. Now, there are some things to this. One, at the end of this month, you'll get a first read of what we call a tentative budget. So what the state does require is the board approves a tentative budget and it's on display for at least 30 days before the board approves its formal budget. And I will give, Kristen will be developing the budget for next year since she's shifting to that role. And we'll put a budget timeline in the packet next week or 2 weeks from now. So, but basically what I wanted to explain is we'll see this budget for the first time in May. It will be preliminary numbers because we won't even have the June 30th actuals yet. So what we've kind of done in the past is I give you a rough draft in May. We talk about it again in June. We approve it in June so that it's on display, and we put it on display for 60 days. We put it on display for June and July, or excuse me, July and August, the rest of June, all of July, and all of August. Then in July, I'll give you an updated tentative budget with the June 30th actuals so you can actually see how the previous fiscal year finished up. We used the month of July and August to make changes, to amend the budget, to tweak certain areas, to see if there's any reductions the board wants to implement. And then we start finalizing the formal budget in September. So in addition to working on the goals and the mission that you talked about at previous meetings, a majority of your time in the summer will be budget review, and you'll see multiple versions of the budget throughout the summer. Now, the changes. I mean, 75% of our budget is personnel, and salaries and benefits. So there's not a lot that will change from when you see it in June through September. The few things may be, if we get an increase in transfers, or if there's any increases in maybe special education, or an increase in special services that need to be provided for special education, maybe an increased number of transfers and an additional class of a required graduation requirement needs to be added. So the changes you'll see through July and August before September, will not be anything of, seven figures. I mean, it's usually 100,000 here or there, but the numbers you'll see by the June tentative budget will be pretty accurate. So I'm throwing that out there because in my experience with new boards and going through the school finances, it is backwards. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it seems kind of weird that, right, we're spending July and August to get ready to open school and hire new coaches, and fall sports start the second week of August, and we don't approve the budget till the second or third week of September, right? So it is somewhat of an awkward process, so that's why I wanted to prepare you before you see the first budget in May. Now, we'll have some additional Finance Advisory Council meetings through May, June, even in July, just to make sure, or to tweak some things, or answer questions, or make sure there's plenty of time to vet every single light item for the entire board before September. So I don't want you to think it's not a transparent process, it's just somewhat of a slow and kind of backwards process.
It certainly confused me when we started. I don't know if I still like it, but it is fun.
It is school code. I looked it up and I just showed Wes. Like, it is school
She was
code that
happy
it
to tell
says, deadline to adopt the joint agreement budget, September 1st, adopt the school district budget, September 30th.
Right. So I
Makes
was right
some
with
sense.
this.
Your favorite thing to read school code.
I do like school code.
So, one other thing to help you out here. Last year, the previous board was very into the finances, and had some real strong financial minds on the board. And last year, we had one board member in particular that wanted us to be very specific on our budgets, because we would have a budget that would say, hey, we're going to have a $300,000 deficit, and then all of a sudden on June 30th, we'd have a $600,000 surplus, and it'd be, a $900,000 swing. And so we did a 5-year analysis of the school district's budgets, and Wes was will remember this as well. I think he might have been at one of those meetings. We were within $25,000 every year on our expenditures. It's the revenue because when the state pays their bills. So if we get all of our state reimbursements, all of our state payments before June 30th, the budget will come out pretty accurate. Sometimes we'll get payments where the 4th of July lands. If the treasurer's office doesn't make those payments till after the 4th of July, they now count for the previous fiscal year, and it looks like we over budgeted, under budgeted revenues. So I mean, it's a really unique process that I promise I will go very slow with to make sure everybody understands it, and you'll have plenty of time to ask questions and discuss it at the public meetings. But I just wanted to kind of set the table for you before you start to see budget items at our next meeting.
And Scott, is the state up to date with its payments?
Still chasing one.
Okay, that's actually pretty good.
They just released the third payment last week, right?
Well,
Categorical?
they said they're gonna release it, but until you receive it, you're still chasing it. So the practice normally has been that they release it almost the last week of June.
So typically,
would
we
get-
budget, just so the board understands, we get some of these things called categorical payments, which is like special ed reimbursement, transportation reimbursement. You're supposed to get 4 quarterly payments. We traditionally budget so that we get 3 of this year's payments and 1 of next year's payments. So you're still getting 4 payments, but it's not the actual 4 that apply. Does that make sense?
Scott, what is the amount that we're waiting on?
About 240, 250 from the state, 250,000.
And you're thinking we're gonna get that
We
on
should.
the last week of June?
That's what I'm.
If we receive that third categorical, will we then be on par with what we budgeted for?
Yes.
Okay.
And payments, you get 1 from the prior year, the 4th quarter payment, and then 3 from the current year.
So this third categorical is from FY19,
Yes.
and we already received the 1 from FY18.
Yes.
Well, that'd be positive.
That would be a good thing,
And we would get all 4 payments as we
budgeted for,
budgeted for.
Correct.
We might actually have a real budget
right?
this time. Maybe.
So, Bill, Deanna, is there any questions? Is there anything in particular you want me to go over, or just, I mean, does that help set the table a little bit?
Yeah, there'll be questions, I'm sure, myself and, as things go along. But typical, after the fact, I'll probably have about 10 questions at about 10 o'clock tonight.
It's okay.
But that's,
Like I said, we'll spend 3 months on it. So, I mean, and especially since we have 3 new board members, this will be their first budget. We'll make sure it's as transparent. You have any questions, we'll make sure we answer them and discuss it, okay?
All right, thank you. I did ask Kevin to explain that because it's complicated. Doesn't make any sense. Visitor statements? He's like, no, I don't want to do it. Okay. That one. Additional discussion items. At this point in the meeting, Board of Education members may request to add an additional discussion item.
No.
no.
Okay. Consent agenda, action items, approval of minutes.
So consent agenda items, what the board usually puts on a consent agenda item is things that are more regular actions that occur at meeting, approval of minutes, approval of bills, or at any time if there's something on the consent agenda items that, and it's voted as one large group, at any time if a board member says, hey, I'd like to pull off the minutes from this day, or we put the bills separate. But if there was something, you could always ask to have a specific item removed from the consent agenda and voted on separately if you didn't want it lumped in as one group. And I did not receive any questions from any board members on the minutes.
All right. So, approval of the minutes. Is there any questions on concerns on that?
I'll read the resolution.
Yeah.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby takes the following action on the listed consent agenda items. Approves minutes from the meetings held on April 30th, 2019, open and closed, as presented and amended in the May 14th, 2019 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Gina, second. Okay.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Salas?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes. Old business, life safety items, capital improvement.
No formal items to vote on or discuss. There is a facilities advisory council meeting next Tuesday. That's Wes and Tom, and they will have an opportunity to meet the engineer, the architect, and the project manager of the pool HVAC project. The pool HVAC project supplies are scheduled to be delivered this Thursday, with some protective covering and stuff going down this Friday, and then work is set to start next Monday. We will not be doing any work, even though the pool has been completely drained because water polo lost last Friday. We did not do any work in the pool this week because we are using the East Gym for testing, AP testing. And Thursday, we have 130 kids roughly taking is it micro? Or is it?
I think that's Friday, but yes,
We
one
have-
of the econ tests and AP stats as well in the afternoon.
We have large groups taking AP tests, so we didn't want any distractions.
Because it'll be loud, potentially.
I don't know any construction guys that are too quiet, so.
It's not the AP Econ test, they'll be loud.
Yeah, so we decided to play it safe and have everything delivered Thursday, and some protective covering will go down Friday, and they'll start work on Monday. That's all I have in regards to that at this time.
All right. New business, payment of bills.
I did receive several questions on bills. I put them together on a sheet. Scott prepared some answers for me. I'll have Scott go through those. I'll intervene when necessary. The one thing is, I know I will send these answers to Mr. Jacobs because he asked for a follow-up on a couple things, and he did submit some questions. So, Scott, whenever you're ready.
Sure. The first thing was, there was just some questions on overall check issuances and employee reimbursements. So kind of want to give the new board members kind of like the process that staff members go through when putting in a request. The first thing, staff begins the process by completing a paper requisition with their order request. Their request is complete. It has to go through a 3-step approval process. They submit it to their department instructional coach who approves it. Then it goes to the administration, whoever's in charge of that department. It could either be the director, the assistant principal, or the principal. And then final approval for the order is done by the CFO on that. So that's your 3-step approval process on the requisition request for various items. For staff reimbursements, they must go through the same process in order to obtain the reimbursement. A lot of times these staff reimbursements are normally due to timing issues, that they're looking for immediate payment on it. For example, might be someone is trying to go to a conference and they have to sign up for it immediately, so they might use their own credit card on it, and then we reimburse for that particular conference on that. The main thing on these is that they are within budget and then also within the overall budget of that department and this whole entire approval process.
So if there's no, if they do not have the money in their budget, they do not get approved, and we do not deficit spend on that, correct?
We try not to on that. There are certain things that I will go to the administration and say, is this something that is truly necessary? And they might say, yes, we need them to go for a particular event or order an item depending on.
So if we were, I think
the
like
need
a
of it.
conference is probably not a necessary item as much as like if we were short 10 textbooks
Then we would get the
or
textbooks.
paperback books like for a reading class, right?
And I also like to look at the overall department budget, because sometimes if you look at a line item, you got to remember the staff members are submitting this stuff in March and April of the previous year. So when they get down later in the year and they're like, I really need this, my supply account is over by $100, but I'm under in this area, I do look at the overall department budget for that. And I will allow an account to go over as long as one of the other accounts are under. So it is kind of a weird process for the staff to try to forecast and predict what they're going to need potentially 8-9 months out. And I don't want to hold them to that particular line item, but I will look at their department budget as kind of like a bucket and go from, do they have, available money in some other fund, but I will bill it to the correct account, because the auditor does like to see the correct account billed instead of saying, oh, paid service has some money in it, but it's a supply. I would rather run the supply account over, even though the paid service has money in it. For coding and audit purposes, that's what I like to do. The departments that you probably will see will be, that probably most frequently do this, it's probably AV and technology. So depending on where the costs come in, you might have, say, $5,000 in the capital account. But because it's not over $1,000, we can't categorize it as capital, therefore it goes in non-cap. So you might see a case where a non-cap account is running over, but then the capital account is sitting at 0. So I look at the overall big picture.
So a couple of questions on that. Can I jump in? So what is staff's involvement then on the budget process? Or is that delegated to the department head?
No, there is requests that go out to all the different department heads out there. And there are, on Thursday, it's the, what do they call that?
Leadership Council?
No, in the morning. With the
PLC.
PLC meetings. And the department chairs, the instructional coaches know what their budget figures are, and they talk with their staff and say, please let me know what you're thinking for next year as far as items that you would need for your particular classes.
We do that with capital as well. If there's somebody
Okay.
that needs a capital repair for their classroom or a capital item, we also do that with software and technology.
So in terms of making those budget estimates, wherever level they're falling at, I think one of the questions I had was, what is the source of cost, right? I saw some payments, we use Granger, we use some reimbursements, there's some other items that are kind of brought into the mix. So are there standards? Is there a requirement to order from a certain catalog? Do we do catalog order?
It depends on what you're looking for. We do a lot of ordering through Amazon. That's one of the big things. A lot of times Amazon is the best price on it. So it's hard to say, okay, this is school specialty, this is all you can use. We're pretty savvy with the money that we have, and we try to get the best prices possible that's out there. Some of those purchases that you went with Grainger and Home Depot and that's our operations and maintenance kind of going and looking into seeing, hey, we really need this. So they place an order at Home Depot, they drive over and get it.
So sometimes what we'll do, I think that's a good question, because school supplies, there's a couple that we use for like Post-it notes, markers, pens, paper, right? And then individual classrooms, like our TV group and our technology department, they'll find a lot of stuff on either Amazon or they'll buy things on eBay. So that's when we'll use the credit card. What our maintenance department is really good about is when we need like a motor, where an air conditioner's motor will break. We have a service provider like Arrigo that will fix our air conditioners and our rooftop units. But if you order the part through them, you'll get the 10 or 15% markup on the part where they make some money. So a lot of times what Joel will do is order the motor from Grainger, go pick up the motor or have that shipped here, and then just pay for them to do the install and the repair. Does that make sense? So we do, there are a lot of moving pieces with that.
So is there a requirement then to look at 3 prices? I guess my question is the process. You've got the 3-point on the requisition. It goes in. The order, when the order is placed, what type of price comparison takes place at that
So
point?
anything over 5,000, we ask them to get 3 quotes. Anything over 25,000 has to go out for public bid or RFP.
But it was the under 5s that I was focused on. Under 5 is...
So like if it's a catalog item or something like
Yeah.
that, I mean, they usually try to find the 2 or 3 best quotes, but it's not that there's a set board policy on items that low.
I feel like teachers are pretty frugal, and we come from a place of frugality and trying to shop around and get the best deal and know that this is the way that organization operates to begin with. That's how I approach it in my job, right?
There's no set standard, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I know we do have
Oh, I'm sure most
purchasing.
people do that in their own home, right? I'm just
Right.
We do have purchasing co-ops that we're part of, and a lot of times we'll look at the pricing of that, but then Joel Hatchie, our facility director, can get a better price through somewhere else. So we also have that through our insurance company where they offer cleaning equipment, and they're always like, how come you never buy it through us? How come you never buy it through us? Because I'm like, through Airmark we can get a better price with it. So we are pretty savvy with the money that's out there, and we do solicit, the best price on what we can possibly get.
Now, one thing I think a couple board members did submit is the use of the American Express. There are 2 American Expresses. The superintendent has an American Express card, and the CFO has an American Express card. What will happen is I very seldomly use my American Express unless it's paying for something if I'm going down to Springfield or if I'm taking a group to a lunch or a dinner or breakfast meeting, something of that nature. A lot of times what the American Express is used is technology will come down and say, hey, I can get these pieces on, eBay for a better price, so, on Amazon. So they use the American Express to purchase things online because they don't take a purchase order requisition. Scott, you want to go to the next question?
Yes, this brings us into the actual payment of bills. If we look at board book page 89, there was a question on Harry Bone for $18,084. Harry is the assigner for the boys basketball referees. We pay Harry, and he pays the rest of the refs throughout the course of all the different leagues and games that are out there. There was a question about what was the total amount of games with this. There's 145 games between the shootout and the camp games, and then there's 226 games for the summer league. The reason that this is paid through the board account is for tax purposes. We already spoke with Harry. He knows he's going to be getting a 1099 on it. And then what happens here is then the boys' basketball activity account reimburses the board account. So there's no cost to the board side with it, but we just run it through the board so that we can get them the 1099 for that dollar amount that we paid Harry. The next question that was submitted was on special education costs. Currently, the district utilizes 10 different out-of-district schools for special education students who are outplaced based on their IEPs. IEPs are individualized education plans. These placements are based on the IEP team determining where these students would be most successful based on their disability and needs. Each outplacement is looked at on a case-by-case basis by the team, and there is a line item in the budget that captures all the out-of-district tuition costs to the district. The current budget amount is $1.322967. So it's a pretty significant number for out-of-district tuition for these special education students. The district is responsible for approximately the first $29,000 of the tuition for each of these students that is outplaced. This is approximately 2 times the per capita amount we spend on a traditional student. And this formula the state uses to calculate the reimbursement for the district. Of the $1.3 million of the outplaced students, after you spend that per capita money of 2 times of 29, that difference then for the tuition is reimbursed by the state at 80%. So with that, we get roughly $225,000 reimbursed by the state for students who are outplaced.
How much again?
$225,000.
And that's part of the categorical.
Yes. And then we also have federal room and board reimbursement, and that's reimbursed at 90%. And we have approximately $215,000 that we get reimbursed for that.
So roughly 440 of the 1.3 will be reimbursed?
Yes.
So technically, the out-of-district tuition doesn't cost 1.3, it's about 900,000. Now, here's how the stuff gets backwards again. We spend 1.3 million in FY19, we get reimbursed in FY20. So you're always getting reimbursed 1 year in the rears. So
You pay up front.
and then you receive the reverse.
And then you pay it back.
So really, the categoricals we're receiving this year are from FY18.
So we're responsible for the 29,000 plus 20% for tuition.
Roughly, yeah. Now, they're supposed to reimburse, I mean, when they say 80%, I mean, is that just their payment cycle, or is that roughly what the 29,000 comes out to be?
No, it's 80% of what's left over.
Left over.
Okay. And that's just the annual
And that's been
percentage, or
going-
that's been on average?
That's been going down. It used to be higher, but it is now 80%. It is for fiscal year 19. I believe at one point it was 90%.
Yeah, I think it was 87 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, not good. Okay, so let's take a break on this one for a second and talk about it. So does everybody understand? So traditionally, the per capita number on a traditional student is 14, roughly 14 and change. So the first, we have to spend 2 times per that on the tuition is the district's responsibility. So let's round it to 29. Anything over 29 is then subject for that 80% reimbursement. So if a tuition is $40,000, we pay the first 29, and then we'll receive 80% on the remaining 11,000. Does that make sense? But we pay the whole 40 up front.
So, and then, again, the state is always late on its bills, and they continue to make.
To drop the
percentage, right?
Yeah, I think most importantly though, because there were two board members submitted the same question. And so it was just kind of like, hey, how do we track this? And we're seeing these different names. Like one of the names is a Christian school, it looks like. But it's a private placement that offers services for the student's disability or, and so we have to, I can't go into too many details. But, you know, this is something that we're watching on a regular basis. We're trying to put some programs in place at the high school level. Being a school of 1,600, it's a little hard, and being a single district. And in some of your bigger districts with multiple schools, you may find that you have a few students at each campus that have the same disability. So maybe you run one cooperative class at one building to be a level of intervention, right? So some of that we do not have the leisure of doing. We've tried to put some things in place here where there's some intervention classes and some things before we would have to place a student at an outside placement. We do belong to the LADSI Cooperative. Most of the services that we get from the LaGrange Area Special Ed Cooperative are like our OT, our speech pathology, our physical therapy, our nurses. Only us and LT are the only 2 high schools in that cooperative. Everybody else is elementary. So some of the elementary schools all share a classroom and where they'll have maybe all of their deaf and hard of hearing students. With the high school students, we don't have as much ability to do a cooperative classroom like that. Make sense?
But
Okay.
it's also more fiscally responsible to go through LADSI than to bring on more
Yes,
staff.
the OT, the P, occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses, school psychologists,
Bilingual.
a bilingual, we do our own bilingual here.
Psychologist? No, like that.
What do you
Like a
mean
bilingual?
a bilingual psych is like ridiculously
Could be like a
hard to
vision
find.
itinerant.
All our
Right.
psychs are through LADSI.
Right.
Right.
Could be an assistive, an AT person.
Correct,
Right.
assistive technology person, all that we do through LADSI, and we get a cooperative purchasing price for those services. I think the nature of the question, though, was just, it's a high tuition amount going out the door every year, and we just wanted, the board members just wanted some explanation on how that's tracked and where that's at in the budget. Scott listed the specific budget accounts. I don't know if you want to write these down or just wait till we go through the budget next time if you wanted to look them up.
I will look them up in the budget, that's okay.
Okay,
You don't need to read them off to me.
all right.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Scott, next question was on 92.
Can I ask
Oh, wait,
one quick
Yes, go
follow-up
ahead,
on
I'm
that?
sorry, Dee.
So the 1.3 you cited, is that a special budget category for the out-of-district schools? I'm assuming there's additional categories that deal with other special ed costs within the budget? Okay, so
Correct.
I will educate myself on that.
Yes,
Thank
there's,
you.
just real quick, there's the 10, 19, 12 is the out-of-district.
Okay.
On the function code. And you'll see LADSI is also a separate item that's out there. And then you'll see under 1,200 is our special ed costs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, board book page 92 on Frontline Technologies Group. This is the annual license renewal that is due in June for the district. Frontline is the district's online application management software program for posting vacant positions and where candidates submit their employment applications to the district. It also serves as the absent employee management system for substitute scheduling. On board book page 96 and 97 for Quest, District 208 has a satellite agreement with District 94, 95, and 106. The food is prepared at RB here and delivered to the various satellite districts. District 208 pays the cost in advance for the particular month that we're in to Quest, and then bills the satellite districts for reimbursement for their portion of the cost. The revenue and expense offsets each other in the budget. As part of the agreement with Quest, District 208 receives sales revenue on additional meals sold at the satellite schools and for the sales at Riverside Brookfield here. The district generates approximately $90,000 to $100,000 in revenue annually. The next question submitted was on board book page 98 under Sievert scoreboard. The new scoreboard was purchased to replace the 12-year-old malfunctioning scoreboard, which has had several repairs and replacement service calls in the last 3 years. The cost of the scoreboard was covered by the $50,000 grant received from Aramark in their recent contract extension, and the remaining cost was addressed by the Athletic Boosters Club.
So the scoreboard was at zero cost to the school district. State-of-the-art scoreboard, also new time clocks. The scoreboard is Wi-Fi, and it's Seifert Electric is out of Forest Park, and it's a Daktronics model, which is the most popular model in local high schools as well as in the college circuit. Our previous scoreboard was a Nevco, and there was only one service provider. And we had multiple occasions on Friday nights where either things weren't working. Last year during a school board meeting, we were hosting the sectional championship between Hinsdale Central and Lyons Township in soccer, and the scoreboard did not work, so we had to do like an on-the-field clock and scoreboard, and people were, some of the board members went out to watch the game before the start of the board meeting, and people were complaining. We had it rewired 3 years in a row. It was just time for a new scoreboard. And so we were able to coordinate that into a contract extension with Aramark, and they usually give a grant when you do a contract extension for stuff for your facility or for your capital projects. And so we were able to purchase the new scoreboard at no cost to the district.
Is there a lifespan for this?
It should be much longer than 12 years, I hope, for $60,000. Yeah, I think that board was purchased in 2006 by the Booster Club, and I think some things changed with technology. We had some issues with the wiring from the ground, where it was connection to its power supply, and we had some things short circuit out. So each year we kind of took one thing off. We took off the nameplates and we just put on like a home and visitor sign. Then we stopped using the message board because some of the numbers were missing in the message board, and then things it was a different kind of product, and it did not hold up to the use that we get out of it. So this should be much better. And it's also a Wi-Fi controller. That was the other thing. The Nevco scoreboard was programmed on a computer, and so then having the connection from the computer in the press box down to the scoreboard, we had some issues with that. So this is all wireless and runs on Wi-Fi. And it matches the same system that we have in the gymnasium that we put in with the donation from Loyola. So all our scoreboards are now from one provider, the same service provider, the same manufacturer, etc. And 2 board members had submitted a question on that. So
How long is that contract with Loyola?
the Loyola contract gave us $25,000 up front and then $25,000 over 4 additional years. So I think we have another 2 years remaining.
Okay, the next question submitted was on board book page 104. Under the American Express bill, there was a question as to why the check run went from 95946 to 95949. The reason behind this is when you get the check cut by the township treasurer, it puts all of the description of what was purchased on it, starting at the first check, going to the next one, and then finally ended on the third check, which was the 95949. So there wasn't any glitch with it. It's just because the American Express bill was
That long?
that long with it.
You know, we should probably take a 30-second timeout on this one as well. We keep mentioning the Township Treasurer's Office, so just so everybody's aware, the school district in Cook County is one of the only counties left that still does this. You have a Township Treasurer's Office. It was something that was created I'm not for sure, but it might even be prior to the 1900s. It's in like an old state statute. And the idea behind the Township Treasurer's Office is that it would help school districts manage their finances. So all of the school districts in the Proviso Township area go to the Proviso Township Treasurer's Office. So the the property taxes collected in Cook County go to the Treasurer's Office, and then they disseminate them accordingly to each school district. And then they pay off each school district's debt, et cetera, based on the levies. And the other thing that they are responsible for is pooling the school district's dollars that are in reserves and collected over time and investing that money for interest on investments. One of the most archaic things is that they handle still cutting our checks. Is that right, Scott?
Yes.
So we process our payroll on a program here at the school district, and then we have somebody go and pick up checks every 2 weeks. And up until this year, which we're paying for a significant amount, each school district in the township is paying a significant amount of money to go to a state-of-the-art accounting software system called Infinite Visions. Up until that, we would pay for a program called DCR, which is still run on a mainframe and it does not speak to Excel or the internet. And we would pay every year for a T1 line to still send faxes and things like that. So we're pretty outdated at the treasurer's office. I used to have an annual report from the treasurer's office to the Board of Education, and I would do that right around the time of the audit in October, November, so that the school district would get the audit from our auditor, and then we would hear a summary of the audit from the Township Treasurer's Office. The previous board attacked let me rephrase that. the previous board was very aggressive in their questions to the township treasurer's office and their management of resources and like out-of-date technology and reporting and some of those things. And they have refused to come to the board meeting over the last few years. Now, I'm going to retry to open that in an invitation now with a new board so that you can meet maybe with the township treasurer at least once a year to get a better understanding of their role and their responsibilities with the school district. Lyons Township Treasurer's Office and Lyons Township High School, they've been battling back and forth in a lawsuit. Lyons Township High School has been trying to get out of the Lyons Township Treasurer under the auspices of the Treasurer's Office for the last few years. That legislation still has not been passed yet downstate. So if there was something that would open the door to that possibly somewhere down the line, that may be something we would look at with 95, 96, 94 and ourselves of pooling our resources and maybe doing our own investment, maybe, hiring one full-time separate CFO that all 4 districts could split and do nothing but investments, payroll, and some of that stuff. But at this point in time, we all pay the township treasurer's office. Okay, so when you hear treasurer's office, that's what we're talking about. Sorry.
Is Riverside, that's Riverside Township, so does that
We're in
make
the
a difference?
Proviso Township.
Right, we're in Proviso, but they're in Riverside, does that make a
They're in-
difference?
No, they're in
Proviso.
ours.
Oh, they use Proviso for their treasurer as well, even though,
96, 94, 95, us,
95,
Lions,
okay,
There's 14 different districts.
14
Okay.
districts, Proviso, Math and Science, Maywood, Broadview, Bellwood, they're all within the Proviso Township
gotcha.
office.
And then just to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Skinka said with going to that new system, the account code streams are going to be changing. So what you see currently in the budget is not what you're going to see when you switch to Infinite Visions. Infinite Visions is a totally different coding system, still goes and follows the Illinois accounting manual as to if on the revenue side, whatever the source is, and then on the expenditure side, whatever the function is. So it still follows it, but it's going to be a longer account stream. There'll be 25 digits in the new accounts with it. It'll be very similar to what you'll be able to figure out, okay, where it's coming from, but just know that the accounts will be different coming July 1.
So
with
who's
it.
mapping that? They're mapping it?
No,
You're having to do it?
it's already been mapped.
Okay.
All the accounts have been cleaned up.
Kristen and Scott have been going for the last 2-3 months.
Okay, so they have included you in the process?
Everything
about that?
is, it started,
Yeah.
it's been a 9-month process
Sure.
with it. So was able to start cleaning up the accounts, getting rid of the inactive accounts, trying to make the descriptions better for the board members to understand what they are. Just know that, we are held to whatever amount of characters that they have with the description. I know in the current one that we have, it was only like 50 or 60 characters, so you couldn't really add that much to it. So hopefully with the new one, it takes a little bit more. It should be more informational, where you'll be able to understand and track where everything is being billed and what the accounts are.
Will the reports look different? I mean, will there be
They're-
an ability to have different category, different?
It will look different at this particular time. We do not know exactly what they're going to look like. You can tailor them to whatever your likes are, like with the standard reports that are in the actual system. You may not like it, so Kristen may bring, here's 5 different reports that you can see. Do you like any of these? And you'll say, yes, as a board, we would like to see these.
It's
Or we
quite
don't
the
like this.
undertaking that's going on in our transition. Not only are we transitioning from with Scott and Kristen, but also with this new accounting software. So the first thing is actually getting all of our accounts into the system, then trying to build a budget into the system. We're going to have to hand enter all the actuals because there's some stuff that won't go over from DCR. So
Also
it's,
testing payroll and.
Right.
different
It's
things
been
of
built
that
from the
nature.
ground up. So it was a complete
and they're
blank
making us
slate.
pay for every penny.
Yes.
So it was a custom solution that they chose? There wasn't a standard?
They chose. So even though a majority of the school districts are on Skyward, they're using Infinite Visions.
That's interesting.
No.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's fully custom. The issue is that we're hand entering a lot of the data because we may choose to set our system a little different than District 96. So there's certain things that the township treasurer will upload, for example, for us, that we've downloaded from DCR, but then a lot of it is hand entering information.
And then the spreadsheet, or the budget that is printed out from Infinite Visions, it's just a list of all the accounts in the previous year's budget. And so the board is, previously, so Kristen is now taking everything out of Infinite Visions and exporting it into Excel so that we can do a more detailed budget for the board. So that may be something that the board may say in the future, hey, let's just keep it out of Infinite Visions so we can see all the, I mean, what the past practice is to do a lot of this stuff by hand.
I would just say the number of vendors have increased over the past year, or have they decreased,
For,
that we cut checks to?
I would say they probably decreased
Okay.
with it. That was part of the undertaking. Two of this was not only are you doing all your HR stuff, but entering employees, we also looked at our vendors and said, let's clean this up too. If
Do a
we haven't
vendor
used a
scrub.
vendor in 5 years, let's get rid of it. So we used 3 years of history and entered those vendors into the new system. But I will say it has decreased. We try to use the ones that we know are the best for pricing.
Sorry, Wes, I distracted everybody. Let's get back to the question.
No,
Good information.
That's how we go. We go again,
Yeah.
sidetrack.
Anybody request paper checks?
Yeah, we gotta talk about it.
No, nothing. We make it so they have to have direct deposit moving forward with it. And then I still want to add a little bit more with the Infinite Visions from the Township Treasurer. All of Cook County treasurers are on Infinite Visions. So that's one reason that the township switched, because other townships have gone to Infinite Visions and they would have them as a resource to ask questions on the implementation of it.
Well, we are the only county that still uses the Township Treasurer's Office, correct?
Cook, but every different location within Cook, they have Infinite Visions.
Okay. 117, Scott, John Dorhauer.
John Dorhauer, for $680, they had a professional orchestra band play at our spring band concert for 45 minutes. The cost was covered by the proceeds that the concert generated. The board account will be reimbursed by the activity account for the cost of $680.
And then there were a few questions from Mr. Jacobs. I think scoreboard and Quest were on there, so no need to repeat that. Maybe just the cover sheet.
Yeah, the cover sheet had a typo on it. It was reading May 15th. It should have been May 14th on that with the payment of bills, if you saw the very first cover sheet. There was also a question in regards to, was it coincidental that the payroll in April was very similar to the May bill total? That was just coincidental on that. And let's see, was there anything?
Yeah,
else?
why don't you quickly go into impressed account? That was the only
Okay.
other question.
Alright. The interest account is a separate checking account that the district has access to. This allows us, it's a $60,000 separate checking account. It allows for flexibility to issue checks to vendors in between board meetings. The majority of the checks issued using the interest account are to pay officials, dues and fees for different games or activities that are needed to be paid immediately, and to reimburse the staff, and then also to pay the workers that are at the sporting events or at the activity events. Some of the board bills are paid using the interest account, depending on the due date. There are certain vendors that will not budge on the due date, so you may see a check cut through interest to pay that. I know one of them is American Express on that, so keep an eye out on that. Home Depot is another one that a lot of times we'll say, no, this is when this is when it's due, we need that check. So keep a look on that with those. We try not to incur any late fees, that's why we have access to it. And we try to keep everyone kind of happy with the officials, the scorekeepers, the ticket takers, the announcers, paying them
That's
in a
strictly,
timely fashion is.
those people that are paid out of Impress though are only people that are non-district employees.
No, we will pay some that are employees
Okay.
with it.
But, I
Depending
mean-
on when the event came in, we try to, make it so that they're not waiting over a month to get their paycheck for the event that they did.
That's one of the challenges with the Township Treasurer's Office, is they have deadlines for making payroll for
Right.
supplemental things that are often significantly in advance of when they're actually cutting the check because of the other steps that are involved. So that, depending on, there are a few times where the Township Treasurer changes those dates.
They do.
And then that causes a significant issue or significant delay in pay.
Does any of this seem to be going away with the new software?
I don't believe so.
I mean, as much as possible, we should try to pay employees on the 15th or 30th. The employee's not going anywhere, nor is the district. I get out of Impress paying officials, paying our dues and fees, right? If someone's going to a tournament and there's not a board meeting at the right time, they get a check cut, or if something changed. But in regards to our employees, unless it's a reimbursement to their personal expenses that they had to cover for something, we should try to, do their game and activity coverage as much as possible on general payroll. Can we work on that going forward?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that it?
I believe that is all the questions that were submitted.
Discussion? Any more? No.
I'm looking forward to seeing the reports out of the new system. I went through an Oracle conversion in the last year. I know how much work it is for you guys with accounts and getting the strings right and cleaning up vendors. It's a lot of work, so good luck.
Want to read the resolution?
Sure. Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the payment of bills as presented and listed in the May 14, 2019 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Second?
Gina, second. Okay, Mary.
Ms. Gio?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Salas?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes. All right, lease for 2 14-passenger school bus. First read.
First read, Board of Education, the school district has 3 white minibuses that you will sometimes see parked either right now. If you look out the window, you can see them parked in our tennis court lot. One is a special ed handicap accessible bus that was donated to the school district. It's about 8 or 9 years old. We use this with transporting some of our special needs students to job location programs and their transition programs. The other 2 we use for activities and athletics for small teams, clubs, people going to competitions, etc. The 2 that are on the lease are the 2 minibuses, so their 3-year lease is up. And Scott has been working to try to get prices on new leases, and I'll let him go into that.
Okay, the first thing, the current lease that we have, we're paying $7,646 per bus for a total of $15,292. I sent out requests for quotes to 4 different bus companies out there. There's not that many that are in this industry. I had 2 that did not quote, and then I had 2 that quoted. Midwest Transit, our current vendor that we have for these buses, came back with the best price of $9,270 on it, beat out Midwest Sales by $4.55 per bus. They are very good to work with. And in there you can see that the cost increased due to the increase in the Chevy chassis, which is the most popular chassis for these buses that are out there. I did have them quote what Ford was. Ford was actually a little higher because they don't produce as many as the Chevy, so it came in higher. And then interest rates on the lease increased from 2.70 to 4.75. The one thing that I do want to give the board is, for example, our golf team. If you were to use First Student to go to a course, you're probably looking at one trip to and back, to the course and back is probably about $300 for one trip. So if you take that and times that per 1 week that they're practicing on this, and that's just the boys. If you did it with the girls, it starts to add up. So you can see that these mini buses are very cost effective for the district with it as you go through the entire school year on it. They're utilized pretty much every day.
Well, we even
after school.
looked last year, we did a study, didn't Mr. Doman and you do a study on the possibility of getting a third?
Yes.
And then it came out that it was just, that was not as adding a third cost was not as efficient.
Not as efficient, and then also we don't have teams that fell into that category of number of participants. So we try to maximize our sports teams that have the lower numbers to utilize these, but some of them are just too big, you wouldn't be able to do it, and it wasn't economical to have the third one.
Okay. And wasn't there something with delivery?
Oh, that was an issue too. The biggest issue is because the lease is up at the end of June, Midwest Sales couldn't guarantee that they would have delivery of their 2 buses by July 1. Midwest Transit is able to have delivery here July 1, and plus they're our vendor with it, so if it runs a little bit over it, they can still guarantee it with it. So that was a huge issue that I had, and I didn't want to commit to anybody without the board seeing it and understanding, every contract has to be approved through the board with it for this.
Do we use these in the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott, what's the fuel cost to fill up one of these?
They get
Roughly.
about, I would say that I think they get about 10 to 12 miles per gallon on them. I'm not exactly sure what the cost of fuel is. If you broke it down, that's something that I could look into for you on it. They're not going very far though. Sometimes, they're just going from here to say a ball field, and you're using them locally. But they have been used to go to a state chess tournament on a weekend with it. So I would have to look into what the average fuel
just
cost would be.
just curious.
So a couple of years ago, when I created a purchasing agreement with the Village of Riverside so that we purchase our fuel for our minibuses and driver's ed cars out of the public works station with the village. And so I think there's a small markup, but it's not the same as if we used to go to Citgo or the Speed Mart or whatever, and now we fill up our vehicles all at the village public works station.
Okay.
The other thing he brought up really good at the end, as a good example, was like when we go down for a state chess meet. So the kids go down to, I think it's Illinois State or somewhere in Springfield for a state chess meet. And we take the minibus. We pay, sponsors paid by a board account for the whole stipend for the whole year, and then we usually pay for an additional sponsor to go at that weekends for overnight supervision and transportation supervision. But then there's no transportation costs. If you were using First Student, you usually got to pay for the bus driver to go down there, the bus driver's hotel, and then the bus driver, so you're paying for that bus driver for the whole weekend. It's not like where he drops you off and stays, because you need to be able to get the kids to dinner, back to the hotel, back to the venue, etc. So it does become very expensive very fast.
Are there any special licensing requirements to drive this? It's not a CDL, is it?
It is not. All of our teachers get some training, correct, Scott? They turn in their license, they can put on the insurance, we go through the emergency exits.
We give them training at the beginning of the year, and we submit to the state their driving record to make sure that they have a clean driving record on it. If they were to use it during the regular school day, there is a special license that you need. Our special ed department, there's several teachers that have that license, so they are able to do curriculum-based work at a different site using that bus. They get our special ed kids there. But in general, if it's used after school, which these are for the activities and the sports, there is no special license for it.
Good question. Thank you.
This is kind of off subject, but speaking of buses, there was a bus company that was shut down, I think, this week or last week. Do we do any business with them?
We do all our busing through Grand Prairie, which is purchased through LADSI, and then First Student is our activity and athletics. I don't think that was any of ours.
Okay. Began with an S. It'll on the tip of my tongue. But they shut down overnight. It was a pretty big outfit.
So, just so the board understands, we just recently, I think either right before you got on, we approved a 3-year extension with First Student. We don't provide, our special ed transportation is provided by Grand Prairie, and we don't provide it during the day routes. So if you have students that are athletes or people watching their student athletes or sometimes their club complain about buses being late or having to wait outside for the bus or pick up and drop offs, it's because we are basically a third, we're the third route for First Student. So they got to run their routes for school districts that are actually using them for pickup and drop off. And then they come to us after that to take the kids to their athletic events and stuff like that. So, but even with that, when we went out to bid 2 years ago, we sent out 4 or 5 requests to bids and we got 2. Same thing, it's because people are having trouble finding bus drivers, and especially in the off hours for high school sports, when you're coming home, you're picking a group up at 3:30 or 4 o'clock and you're not getting back till 9 o'clock. So. And this is a first read, Scott. If the board waits till the next meeting to approve it, that still provides you enough time? Or do you need that? Is this something you would ask the board to consider tonight?
I would ask them to consider it tonight. The pricing on that, I have worked with the different vendors and got that down significantly compared to what the first quote that came back on it. The biggest thing is I'd like to have this locked in so that it would be signed, sealed, delivered, and then get the contract agreed to with them, and then have delivery July 1.
Scott, how much was the first quote?
The first time that they came in, it was over $10,000 for each bus. I want to say it was like $10,800.
Did First Group and Commercial Bus Sales indicate why they wouldn't bid? Or they wouldn't
They did
submit a
not.
quote? They just did not respond.
I sent the exact quote. One came back that we cannot quote on it, and then the other one, I kept calling, and never got a response from them. As I sent the email and even spoke to the guy. I said, here's our specs on it. Can you please get it to me? And I never got anything back from them.
So at the end of the day, this has gone up $3,000 plus. Is that what we're talking about? From the previous?
Yes. About $3,200. And that would be locked in for the 3 years.
Right. $1,000 a year more.
All right.
Do we
Now,
have any-
Scott, one thing obviously, we like not to, so the first meeting with the new board, I've already broken my rule where I don't ask them to vote on something the first time they're seeing it. So I'm sure they're all looking at me like, well, Kevin said we wouldn't have to. So,
I understand.
It's a tight timeline.
I understand you're trying to get this in so that we can, it gives you basically the month of June to get it turned around, right? So that we have the buses for July.
I know I would have had it to the last board meeting. It was still under negotiation as to what the final price would be, and were they going to match it, were they not going to match it, and then could we get delivery July 1 if we went with the other company, and then Midwest Transit came in and said we will match the price, and they actually beat the price and can guarantee the July 1.
So
That was my holdup on the last, without bringing it to the board prior to this.
So their letter, they indicated they can also offer a 5-year plan. Was there an additional price change for a 5-year offer?
Wasn't there something with the repairs then?
The 5-year one,
I'm sorry.
you could lease it, but the thing is it would be full warranty for 3 years, 36,000 miles on that, and then depending on how much wear and tear it has, the district would be on the hook for the maintenance, year 4 and 5.
So that's why traditionally we only have done 3-year leases, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, that was one thing.
It does include the Rainbow Deluxe fabric inserts.
It's something to think about.
I just putting it out there.
Bonus.
So if the board doesn't feel comfortable, I understand, and Scott will
I'm
have to
fine.
call the vendor and let know. I think it's important if maybe you want to ask the board how they feel,
I'm fine.
Right.
where they're at.
What's your comfort level?
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
All right?
You want me
There's
to
been
read?
good diligence on getting the quotes. That's-
Yeah, and
that's
I
what it
worked
is.
very hard on that. I tried to get every option possible.
Like I worked really hard.
It's
Okay.
I'd hate for it to go out.
All right.
Right.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the 3-year lease with Midwest Transit Equipment for 2 14-passenger multifunctional school activity buses at $9,270 per bus with an annual cost of $18,540 as presented in the May 14th, 2019 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Let's get somebody else to second it besides.
Second.
Okay.
All right, Gina, second.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Salas?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
All right. District goals, mission, and vision.
This is just the information the board wanted to see. Mary Ann was going to put a copy of the district goals. It looks like it's just a copy. Oh, these are the historical goals, Mary, or is it something that's multiple times?
No, the historical.
Historical.
It's historical.
It goes back to
2012.
when this format was implemented in, I believe, fiscal year
2010.
14. No, we went back and hand calculated. The format was a little different. We went back and hand calculated some of those.
Right, I think we had asked for more than just a 3-year look back.
Right? So each year, each chart adds another year then, right, Kristen? Is that what this is going through then?
Yeah, I believe so. I think there's one duplicate, but yes, they should.
And Mary Ann, can you please make a copy of the vision and mission that are in the student handbook and online, and put a copy in the board book?
It's on the, what we did was we put it on the bottom of
Oh,
the
okay.
district goals. So that was all in one place.
And there's no vision statement, it's just a mission?
Correct.
Okay. And it's on the first one. Riverside Brookfield is a partnership of parents, students, staff, Board of Education, elementary schools, and community. This academic partnership will provide a comprehensive education in a safe, orderly, well-equipped environment. All students will be prepared with the intellectual, aesthetic, vocational, physical, personal, and social skills necessary to be responsible and effective members of a diverse and changing world. Okay, so, this is something I think that's going to be taken on a mind of its own. It's going to be a process that the board president will work on with the rest of the board. I will provide whatever information the board would like. If we focus today just on a brief discussion, I can give you a little background information. We wanted to create, when these were created, we wanted to have some data that was measuring the high school on an annual basis. There was some discussion between the board. I wouldn't say there was universal agreement in regard to some of the headers. I know one in particular was the 26 composite ACT. And I think where that drew was there was a portion of the board that wanted us to compete or measure ourselves against the top 10 public high schools in the state of Illinois. And so they wanted to see on an annual basis where we were. And then there was a group of board members that also understood that, not every high school is the same. Every high school is dealing either with different demographics, different economic and social variables, and so, it's not comparing apples to apples. The 100% benchmark on most of these goals. One of the reasons we used the 100% benchmark, which again is a very aggressive goal, because as you can see over the last several years, we've never gotten to 100%, even though we've shown significant growth in a lot of these. Was how do you, with a high school, determine what 1%, 2%, 3%, or whose kid is not going to be college ready or is not going to graduate, right? And so when we were going through these discussions several years ago, the board felt it was better to say, hey, we should try to get to a 100% graduation rate so that we're invested in every kid getting a diploma. Or the college readiness goal of 100% of our graduation class having a 21 or better. How will you determine, what do you say to the, if a parent comes in and says, hey, what if my kid's one of those 3%, what are you going to say? Our goal is 95% of our kids are going to be college ready, then what about the 5%? parents and the students that are part of that 5%, what are you doing with them? So that's kind of the logic behind, 100% of the graduating class. I think the graduation rate, the student average daily attendance, there were two reasons behind the average daily attendance. One, kids can't learn and scores can't go up if they're not in class, right? And so that was an important variable. And then the other reason was under the old state aid formula, your state funding was determined by your average daily attendance. So there was some fiscal implications of having an improvement in student attendance, because then it was in the number of dollars issued by the state was increased. Under the new funding formula, I don't know if that plays as large of a part. The engagement was very big because the board at the time felt that the more students are engaged and have a relationship outside of the school day, the more likely they were to attend school and be invested in school to be eligible for their activities or their athletics. And so that was one of the reasons of having student engagement. The AP scores, that was something that was very big in this district prior to my arrival. It's one of the variables that's used for, the U.S. news reports and some of the local medias that judge schools on the number of students that enroll in an AP class and the number of students that pass an AP class. The other logic of having an AP goal was trying to encourage, we have an open enrollment policy with our AP classes. And so one of the ideas of having the AP goal was students, even if they don't pass the AP exam, national studies have shown that kids that take at least one AP course over the course of their 4 years in high school tend to do better in a college level course because they're exposed to what a college level course is like in regards to the assessments, the reading levels, the work levels. So that was the goal of trying to, more with the AP and excellence, of trying to get at least 75% of the graduating class to pass an AP class and to take an AP class. The last one was the end of the year fund balance. The state of Illinois recommends that a school district maintain at least a 33% fund balance so that in the time of a lapse in dollars or revenue or property taxes, a school district can still maintain its operation. When I arrived in 2011, the school district was in $2.2 million deficit, and our fund balance had tipped as low as 23.3 in 2012. I want to see if it was lower. So it was 30.8 in 2010, and it dipped to 23.3 in 2011, or 23.4 in 2011 and 23.3 in 2012. And so the board wanted this to be a regular goal so that it helped drive the administration and the Board of Education to be fiscally responsible and have do everything they can to have a balanced budget and to begin to rebuild that fund balance. And as you can see, we are currently at 46.2. Oh, wait, no.
No, 45.8.
45.8. Actually 50%, because it's 50.7 out of, we budgeted at 45.8, we came in at 50.7. So that's just a brief background on how some of these goals came up. I think the board is planning on, and this is where I think the board president should take over some of the discussion. I think the idea of doing a retreat and some public meetings on goals.
Right, so I think we talked about doing a retreat. I think that's important for us as a board, get some vision of where we want to go. I talked to Kevin. I think it might be a good idea to have an actual committee outside of the board actually come up with the goals based on the vision of the board. So the board would get some buy-in from obviously the educators, and administrators, and community. but we're the community. But that was my thought there. So I thought I'd like to, I think it's important we do the retreat. I'd like to get it done this summer. I thought we kind of kicked around that last Tuesday in June. Might be a good date. We could all get together. If I'd like to decide at the next board meeting on the 28th a date. So think about that. We can talk about it individually over the next 2 weeks. Kind of discuss where our calendars are, how that works into it.
So is your thought as a closed session, an open session? Is it facilitated?
The only way you can do it in closed session is it has to be facilitated by a state organization. And the only state organization I believe that is approved to do this is the Illinois Association of School Boards.
So we are looking at that. There is a cost to that we have to research.
You can do it in public. It can be something that still is facilitated. One way to think about this would maybe be the board does a one-night retreat facilitated with somebody from the School Board Association in closed session just to discuss the board's, each individual board member's goals and where they see the board going and where they would like to see the school district going, and help bring consensus of the board together, and then use that consensus to help drive a public format. The one thing that I did receive feedback, and I think I mentioned this before, is that I think we would have more buy-in from the staff if we had some opportunities to get some staff input on the goals. I mean, at the end of the day, some things with a high school aren't going to change. I mean, you want to follow graduation rate, you want kids to come to school, you want kids to participate in school. But just getting some feedback from the staff on the goals, and maybe more of a growth model than instead of maybe a hard number model. Maybe there can be some different ways we measure things. One thing that we've put some money into over the last year or two, and I think the state has now begun to track this on the state report card, is freshmen on track. Studies have shown, the more kids you can save in their freshman year and have them achieve success in their freshman year, the more likely they are to finish school, to graduate, and to have a productive high school career. So we have invested in this freshman academy and doing some things. So that may be a new thing to track, right? Freshmen that are passing core classes and that are engaged in an activity. I don't know.
Same thing with attendance. Isn't that one of the indicators the state uses
It does.
to come up with our designation?
Sure.
It's definitely a variable.
And there's a percentage.
Yes.
I think it's worth spending the money, because if we're going to do it, we should do it right. It's a new process for many
Right.
of us, so I don't know how we would facilitate it ourselves and maybe come to a place that I think it's worth the money, because it's not that.
Yeah, it's not that expensive, and I think I'd be a lot more comfortable, and I'm certainly not comfortable facilitating it. So,
Yeah.
and I think if we get some vision statements, that'll drive the separate committee to come up with the goals. If we can get the goals done by Christmas, I think we're in a good spot.
I mean, I would certainly be in favor of a facilitated discussion. I think we all have our different professional expertise and relative knowledge about what happens here, but having just kind of guiding through goals and vision, I think, is a very productive exercise, and it makes sense to have some structure to it as opposed to
Right.
sitting and talking, right? I mean, and making sure that we do include all of the relevant groups, right? It's teachers, it's other staff, it's community, it's kind of making sure we're casting a wide enough net that we're not eliminating anyone from that discussion.
What are your thoughts? All right. So,
So facilitator it is. I'll start with making connections with the School Board Association on that. And then I will get some information over the next 2 weeks on, is there still need to be a private session with the board first, and then a much larger session after that. I know one school board association group and then one non-school board association group. So the one non-school board association group is more focused on strategic planning and I don't know if we needed to go into that just yet. So let me do some homework on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll talk to the school board association because they still may say that a smaller retreat with the board to get everybody on the same page, thinking the same way, or, you know.
That seems like a good place to start.
You know,
Place to start too.
before you break off into a two-person board committee and poll community groups and stakeholder groups and report back to the board, we should try to make sure the 7 board members are on the same page of where they want this to go.
Absolutely.
Right.
Then
I think
backwards
we
map
need
from
to
there.
set
I agree.
some vision, some agenda to it, and
Yep.
then because it's ours to develop.
Okay.
Makes sense. Sounds
All right.
good. Moving on.
Matters for closed session, personnel, student discipline, sale, lease property, pending intimate litigation, collective negotiation, school safety, visitor statements, none of those. Discussion items, consideration of items for future meetings.
No.
Oh, you know, actually, a couple things. I'm just curious, how much do we spend or are we responsible for unfunded mandates? And
All of them.
All of them.
All of
just,
them.
you know, from an educational
Bill, I couldn't even.
standpoint, for the public and fellow board members, in case we're not all.
Just to kind of frame it for you, and this is going back 20 years. I went to an IEA RA, which is the representative assembly for the teachers union. You know, we have IFT and IEA in this state. So they had a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and the font was probably 12. And on this side were just lines, and it was trifolded, and lines and lines of unfunded mandates from the state. And then on this side was the ones they've taken out, and there were like 8. And so this side was filled with unfunded mandates, and then this is what they've taken out in like the last 50 years. And there were, again, like, you know, like this side was only filled. So it continues to mount, you know, and that was 20 years ago.
I couldn't even, I don't even know if there's really a way to give you a cost analysis or a cost breakdown on that, because we just get stuff from the states, and you know, they'll say, hey, this, you need to make sure you have a service project. Okay. What they don't realize is, you know, some legislators said, hey, I think we should have a service project as a graduation requirement. Everybody in Springfield thought that was a good idea. Then what they don't realize is, okay, under a union contract, we got to pay somebody now $35 an hour to supervise these kids doing a service project. And then the clerical person needs to count the hours, and right? And so there are a lot of unfunded mandates.
Yeah, most are.
For, like, right now, there's a proposal, or this more applies to elementary, like where I'm at, but they want to increase the number of minutes for PE.
To 45 minutes from 40.
Right, but like, we use our gym for a lunchroom, right? So we either have to build and hire more staff in order to meet that mandate. So in theory, they're gonna make this mandate, and then they're gonna let schools waive out of it because they can't afford to pay the teachers, or they can't afford to, you know, so like there's a lot of that goes on too, where you're, you know.
Is there a particular area you would like for me to look into? Or
It's
you're
just
trying
more
to-
generality. And,
Yeah. No, it's a rough go.
Did you see the face that Kevin and I all made when you brought
I
that
don't
up?
know
I
how
was like,
to get under your skin.
I don't think people necessarily realize outside of education how many mandates, almost all of them, in my opinion, are like unfunded. And and many of them are really good mandates, right? Like they're worthy, but they just don't consider that.
They have the
at
best of
state level.
intentions, but
Right.
but as you saw
but-
tonight, like state funding on special ed is roughly 80% of what they're supposed to give us when it's, you know, I mean, like, So we
But
can't
it's
even get the,
mandated
we
that
can't even
we
get
have
the
to
money
do that.
that's due to us, and they keep coming, right? So,
Yeah, one other item, I promise I'll stop.
No,
don't.
so are you
It's
looking
fine.
for that to be on the future agenda, or is that just a question?
That was just a
Just a
question.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another discussion, maybe on an agenda, we'll see, about providing avenues for kids who aren't going to be going to college, whether through, by no fault of their own, whether it be financially, just a generational thing with, you know, their family heritage, you know, just how they were raised, or they have no desire. They're just not, you know, there's always going to be a group of children who just don't like school. And, you know, they may be really good with tools, building stuff,
Right.
hands-on.
We can put this as a future agenda item. The board
I
just
think there's
received.
just so many opportunities
Yeah,
out
the
there.
board just received a report on this prior to the new board getting sworn in, but we have started a college and career committee, and so we're starting an internship program for kids to do internships and get elective credit over the summer.
Okay.
We also started doing dual enrollment and dual
Careers.
credit with Triton, so that students that maybe want to graduate early and start enrolling in an associate's program or a certification program can do that while still attending RB. You know,
Career spotlights.
career spotlights, and then we just had somebody come in from all the trades, or they were coming in, right?
Yeah, that was our first career spotlight. So similar to college visits where we have college reps come in and students can sign up to hear the college rep. We're starting the same thing with careers, so students can sign up and hear either a panel or different people in various careers and trades was one of the first ones that we did.
Okay, so maybe we can put together another report or something I could send out, even if it's a summary, I could send to the board on a Friday update. And then maybe at the start of the school year or end of the summer, we can have Kylie come back.
So,
A good time maybe would be when Beth does her report on matriculation and graduation.
Yeah, but
September.
that's in August, September?
September.
Okay.
I-
Kylie's summary from the previous meeting would be helpful. At least I could get that to the board in the Friday update.
I just have a question then, based on that. How was the attendance for that career spotlight? Do you know?
I don't know if that
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it's gonna have maybe some of those union come in and explain as a college would, and this is the cost, these are what we offer. Maybe the union would come in and say, this is what the cost is, and this is what we offer.
I
And then
think,
how do you get kids to
5-year
attend that?
apprenticeship.
well, Wes
Right,
came
How do
in,
you get kids there to hear it?
Right,
Wes came in last year with
right, with the auto mechanics guys.
multiple guys from United and spoke to about, I don't know, 40 students. Because I went and attended that, and just about the different careers under United. And
What would the process be? I mean, if I were to reach out to would it be inappropriate for me to reach out to an apprentice school here locally and see if they're available to come out here for a seminar or
yeah.
something?
One of those talks.
Yeah, Beth Augustine and the principal will set those up. Beth Augustine would be the assistant principal of student affairs, and she sets those up. We would love to do that. We would promote it to classes, or if we have classes that we offer that relate to that, trade or construction tech or things like that.
Sure.
So we could follow up, you and I, on that a little more.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, because this was directly with the auto mechanics, the auto.
Right.
Because they're mechanics. And then we did a field trip with the computer science group. That was fun. Down-
We're always looking for
network
we're always looking
operations.
for career spotlights for some of our classes, so that's something we could talk about.
Sure.
We need a motion
All
for
right,
close.
closed session.
Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois
Excuse me.
God bless you,
Thank you.
enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
So
Second?
moved.
Oh, we had Mrs. Alice. Oh, so second.
All right,
Good.
gotcha.
Now, time we break it up here a little bit. No, just kidding.
Jim, we'll go back to no second.
Yes.
Yes.
Sierra?
Yes.
Towner?
Yes.
Yes.